All right, good evening, friends and relatives. Welcome to Crazy Horse Memorial. My name is Whitney Rencounter II. I'm the CEO, and it's an honor and a privilege to have Donovin Sprague here this evening from the Cheyenne River, Lakota Oyate. And the mission of Crazy Horse Memorial is to protect and preserve the cultures, traditions, and living heritage of all our tribes all across North America, 570 plus federally recognized tribes, all with their own languages, culture, tradition, way of life. And we here at Crazy Horse Memorial try to carry forth Itancha Henry Standing Bear's vision to help the world understand and learn about all the different tribes that exist. And his first cousin, Crazy Horse Tashunke Witgo, obviously is the showcase of Crazy Horse Memorial. And Crazy Horse was a leader that led the Battle of Greasy Grass, the Battle of Little Bighorn, along with Sitting Bull and many other leaders amongst our people with the Northern Cheyenne, the Arapaho. And this coming Thursday is the 150th anniversary of that victory. And so they have events going on throughout the week. And we didn't want to, compete with Thursday's events up in Montana because many of our leaders will be there. So we invited Donovan to come today a little ahead of time to share and to speak and to share the knowledge that he carries. And we're very honored and privileged to have him here this evening. But we at Crazy Horse Memorial want to continue to allow many artists, historians, culture bearers, and leaders, and to share their stories and to represent their tribes and their people. So we're very grateful for all of you that support Crazy Horse Memorial. I'd like to recognize our board chair from the Sichambu Lakota Oyate Rosebud Sioux Tribe, Dr. Jade Herman. Let's give her a round of applause. She's from the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology. And also Hank Friedel from Custer, South Dakota, the local board member. And we also had Roger Brower, who is a revered artist from Hill City, from the Oglala Lakota Nation. Let's give him a round of applause for being here. He had to travel elsewhere, but he was here for the reception. But we have a board of directors of 21 members on our board that oversee the work here at the memorial. And we have, seasonally, we have over 200 staff that help work and showcase. And also this evening, I want to recognize all of the students that are here from Crazy Horse University. If you all would stand, we want to recognize you and thank you for being here this evening as well. They are all taking 12 college credits from Black Hills State University, our partner institution, and they're working as an intern throughout the memorial here. So we're very excited that they're here this evening to hear Donovan. And so with that, I'd like to introduce to you the Managing Director of Museums, Interpretation, and Cultural Affairs, Dr. Gordon Ambrosino.
Thank you, Whitney. Can we hear me?
No, is this better?
A little better. Good. Yeah, my name is Gordon Ambrosino, and I'm the Managing Director of Museum Interpretation and Cultural Affairs. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you coming out. First rainy day we've had in a while. We're long overdue, so we're glad it's happening. But no better place to be than indoors with a good learning experience with an esteemed scholar during a rainstorm. So my job here, in addition to overseeing the museum, I also oversee our cultural programs offerings here. And this is one of the things that I really love about this place. And really, our cultural programs are really what make this place special. It really set us apart from other museums. A lot of us have been to many museums across the country, internationally as well. And there are cultural programs offerings in many places, but Crazy Horse Memorial really has one of the most extensive and diverse cultural programs offerings of any museum that I know of, particularly in North America. And a lot of people say, even though the mountain carving is our highlight, it's the big project, our cultural programs are really where our visitors really get to learn intimately and be informed about, the cultures and living traditions that Whitney just mentioned. And it's an opportunity for people to interact and meet and learn about the arts in ways that they normally wouldn't be able to. And so the general structure of our cultural programs, our high season runs through May through September into October. And what we have every single day of the week, we have staggered music and dance performances that happen every single day. And then also complementing that, we have artist in residence programs and also a living treasure program. And the living treasure program is great because we really get to, it's more of an interactive hands-on experience. And it's an opportunity, again, for visitors to learn more, not just about arts, but also language and culture in more broad terms. But in addition to that main structure that we have for our cultural programs, we also have special events like the one we have here today. And as Whitney mentioned, we have a very, very special occasion anniversary coming up, the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Greasy Grass, also known Battle of Little Bighorn. And we're very, very fortunate, again, to have an esteemed scholar, historian, archivist, and artist with us in Donovin Sprague to teach us more, not just about that event, but also his personal connections to the people that were involved that day. And so Donovin Sprague is Minicoju, Lakota, and Cheyenne, is born and raised in the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation in Dupree, South Dakota. He's a historian, author, scholar, artist, musician. He's descended from Hump and Crazy Horse families. His Lakota Cheyenne grandparents were Hump 1 and Hump 2, and his lineage also includes Fred Dupree and Mary Good Elk woman. Donovin earned degrees from Black Hills State University and the University of South Dakota, and has taught at numerous institutions, including Aglola Lakota College, University of Iowa, and Sheridan College, Wyoming, where he has served there as faculty since 2020. He's the author of 10 books in American Indian Studies, including his forthcoming manuscript, High Backbone and Crazy Horse, Lakota Cheyenne History from a Family View. An award-winning woodworker and flute maker, Donovin also performs as a guitarist and vocalist and operates the music business across South Dakota and Wyoming. A tribal historian and consultant for the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, he has worked with major museums and cultural institutions nationwide and presents internationally on Lakota Cheyenne history and culture. Please, let's give a warm welcome to Donovin Sprague.
Welcome. Petu Washte. It's a good day. I'm glad to be here. My Lakota name is Chinkahu Wakantia, and that is high backbone. It's the hump off the buffalo. And I think it was General Miles, after some of the surrenders are coming into the fort, that he asked the interpreter what that meant, and they said, well, that's the hump on the buffalo, and they called him Chief Hump after that. It became a last name. I'm, Minikoju, and all of our men married into the Cheyenne tribe. So down in the front, I have a picture of my great-great-grandfather and my great-great-grandmother. The wives, plural, are Cheyenne tribe. And I'm from the one that's sitting next to him. They're sisters. White Calf is her name. And then probably both humps were equally renowned. The father is kind of like with Crazy Horse. There's no proven picture of him. There's no picture that exists. And his sister was named Rattling Blanket Woman. And that's the biologic mother of Crazy Horse. So when Crazy Horse lost his mother at a young age, he spent a lot of time with our family and moved in. So all the books on Crazy Horse, you're going to find reference to that hump, who's the father of him. And then also I have a upcoming book of 500 pages called High Backbone, Hump, and Crazy Horse, a Lakota Cheyenne History from a Family View. It's the years 1680 to about 1920, and I have lots of information in there that's never been disclosed. There's never been a book on the humps. What information was written is pretty mixed up, you know. For example, they'll have the father fighting at the Little Bighorn battle, when all you have to do is look in our winter count calendars. It was throughout the nation. He died in 1870. That was the entry. So I said, well, what'd they do? Resurrect him or whatever, bring him back 6 years later? But it was his son up there. He's 26 years old, right in his prime. So in the book, I have sort of like hump 1 and hump 2 to get used to that. And then his father, too, was also called the Wizard of Lakota Warfare, was some of the terms. And books like Mary Sandoz, they said the Grizzly and the Cub were their names for the first hump and the young Crazy Horse. And David and Goliath, because there was a big size difference. That would be 3 grades for me. Hump was 6'5", 260 pounds. And then we also have from our family, of course, Crazy Horse from his mother, but Touch the Cloud, who was known for his height. He was about 6'8", and we have a number of 7-footers in our family today from that, including up to 7'2". And then another person from that family he became known as Bigfoot and was killed at Wounded Knee Massacre, but his real name was Spotted Elk. And he was only known as Bigfoot for about a year before the massacre, but he went down in history as Bigfoot. We can't get that changed. They just keep referring to that. So those are some things that would help with my book. That's way overdue for the world to know more about our leaders. So I hope to convey with you some of the 150th of the Little Bighorn and also some things that are going on and some general questions that you might have about that event. I just came from up there. I've been up there all week at the Little Bighorn site. And so I was up there on the 125th. It don't seem like 25 years ago, but I spoke up there at the battlefield, and people like Joe Medicine Crow of the Crow was there. He was in his 90s and his full regalia. They took him off to Washington, where he was celebrated. And then also with our tribes, we have 7 of the Lakota bands there. So like some of you were looking at my books, the Ogallala at Pine Ridge, and Sichongu at Rosebud and Lower Brule. Then we got Kunk Papa at Standing Rock. That's Sitting Bull's people. And so I want to show you the flag here of ours, because we are the much lesser known and mixed up or not included. So we have 4 bands at Cheyenne River, the Midikoju, of which I am, and the Itazip Cho, and also the Sihasapa and Uhueanupa. So like and then the pipe represents the white buffalo calf pipe is housed at Greengrass on our reservation. And this is such an important event with Little Bighorn anniversary. The pipe rarely comes out, and the pipe is coming on horseback to Greasy Grass right now as we speak. They're in Montana, and they made a 20-day ride from Greengrass, and that's just one of the reservations. There are people coming from Rosebud and Pine Ridge and different places, and nobody knows exactly how many, probably thousands of people will be there. So I wanted to explain some of that. And then with the Itazip Cho here that are, that was a big part of Hump's band too, even though he was Minikoju and they led a lot of the Cheyenne because the Cheyenne were just like brothers to us. So like at my studies at the college, I'll say, okay, Itazipcho, thank you. The Itazipcho, in one story, they were without their bows. And so the name comes, Itazipcho is without bows, or without the bow. So then you get the French name is sans art. So sans without French, and then the art. So that's how the French renamed a lot of our tribes. So I even tell my students, you probably go to the library, you won't find much on Itazipcho, but look under sans art. So we have to refer to those. And also with the white buffalo calf, the pipe is in the Itazipcho line. And that story of all of that, the woman who brought the pipe and all that, comes from a place called, has anybody been to the Bear Lodge here? Renamed Devil's Tower. So a lot of our names like that have changed, and including all over at the battlefield. They were talking about that, how a lot of people have to learn the names of these ridges, and they're named after superintendents, Luce Ridge and all that, and then soldiers, and nothing is named after the victors. There's that would be a good thing too, to have something to refer to that. I've been on a 3 buses, 50 passenger buses all week right into the Little Bighorn. Yesterday we were down in the Crow's Nest area, and at one time I thought, well, there's a name there. That's probably Crows probably named that. And nope, that's a West Point name for some hill over that way. But anyway, a lot of the history of the southern part of the battle is important because most people don't know that our tribe, Cheyenne River, bought 200 acres. So we own 200 acres on the south end of the battlefield. So that's down where the area of the Lone Teepee story. And the Lone Teepee is also Itazipcho, because the Battle of the Rosebud, we were just over there on June 17th, also the 150th. So that was right preceding the Little Bighorn. And even like Sitting Bull, predicted a great victory. And when that one happened, they said, yep, you're right, and they said, nope, there's a bigger one coming, and that would be the Greasy Grass. So a lot of people will be coming into the 200 acres there. So I'm also speaking there to the tribes. I think it's open to the public, and there may be up to 1,000 people and teepees. I know we have 20 teepees going up here pretty soon, and a lot of camping. And then there's the Real Bird property, which is a lot of people know about them. Crow, who do the reenactment every year of the battle, and they're opening their land up also to tribes. But this is truly a great celebration. I realize that it could be like an observance for some people, because like with the Little Bighorn Associates I spoke to this morning at 9 o'clock in Sheridan, and then I came right here. Those people are experts, on Custer, everything about Custer, everything you wanted to know. And there's a difference in the way we tell our history and stories. And so with that, you've got very much a linear thinking, okay, sequence and order, how many bullets were fired and all that. And for ours is more global, I'll call it, where it's all, just kind of looser ended in oral history stories, and we come together and we laugh or we dance or we sing, and it's much different. So the people who interviewed our elders back in the day after the battle, they never got too much information they liked. They said it was conflicting, and it just wasn't. They weren't very good listeners. They hadn't developed listening skills very well. And so in the whole area, the Little Bighorn Greasy Grass is the most important holiday of the whole year. We celebrate that. And it came about even with South Dakota changing Columbus Day to Native American Day. That was the first for a state. And then along with that came two working state holidays. Was Little Bighorn Day was June 25th, and then December 29th was the other one. What do you think that was observing? That was Wounded Knee. So those were working state holidays proclaimed by the governor at that time, George Mickelson in South Dakota. So with the events that are going on, there'll be a lot of history and sharing from the tribes and all that. I have also a relief up here of the battlefield, and one treat that I brought in just for the Little Bighorn and for you guys. This is a bow that was given to me by the Custer family, and in Monroe, Michigan is the adopted hometown of Custer, and they have a Custer week. It's all week long celebration of his life and legacy. And so I was invited over there as a keynote speaker one year. So since I'm on the other side, I was kind of wondering what was going to happen to me over there. But they were very nice people, and in the end, Custer descendants are still living there and attended my program. And they had this bow in their family, and they don't know whose bow it was, but as you know, no one survived with Custer, and they all came back from Fort Abraham Lincoln by Mandan, North Dakota, as widows. And this was from the Custers, and it had been at a farm in an attic, and they said, this belongs with you wherever you're going out back home. So this is currently, I have it loaned to the Timber Lake and Area Museum. And I chose that museum because it straddles Cheyenne River and Standing Rock. And they said, well, yeah, put it somewhere where your own tribe or your people would see that. It's sinew-backed on the back, tediously, with tendons. And I'm also a bow maker. That's a legacy of the Hump family. Bow making and teaching the first Hump, teaching Crazy Horse how to make bows, and teaching him practice skills. Some of those practice skills were the target was grasshoppers. So you got a bow and an arrow, and your target is going to be grasshoppers to practice with. And so our bows then, just like in my book, disclose that. Of course, everybody knows it, seen me make them, is Osage orange. This is ash bow, excuse me. But Osage orange is where they traded from the southern plains a little bit. And if you get an archer's book, it'll say that's the best wood you can use because you don't have to sinew back them. So that's what they were really using. But we always read a lot of other stuff about Crazy Horse. Ever since I was a young boy, I read other stuff, and I still hear a lot of other stuff. A lot of people seem to know a lot about him, and they have a lot of pictures of him too, which there's not a proven picture out there, but I see him. So anyway, I'll tell you a little bit about the battle then. After the Rosebud victory, Crook went back. He was defeated and went back to where I just came from this morning at Sheridan. That was his Camp Cloud Peak. And he had 1,000 men with him and about 300 Shoshone scouts he had been waiting on to go into battle at the Rosebud. And so my title of that chapter is the Cheyenne name for that. And they reenacted this this past week at the Rosebud. It looked like a warrior was going to face certain death on the battlefield. And over the hill came this woman dressed in her finest regalia. So she rides down there, and rescues him. It's her brother. So that chapter is called, as the Cheyennes call it, the battle where sister saved her brother. And they rode to safety, and all the soldiers are shooting at them, and they didn't hit them, and they got over the hill to safety where the other warriors were, and kind of out of breath, and jumped off the horse. And they said there was a lot of high five going on, and we came out of there okay. So Crook goes back to Sheridan, and he doesn't make the Little Bighorn battle then. So some people say, well, what if there'd have been 1,300 more people there with Custer? And we usually say it would have taken us just a few more minutes to win that battle. But anyway, what are they doing? So talking about sources, important sources for my 1680 book. Why did I choose 1680 for it to start? Because it follows the winter counts drawn on a hide, the most important event. And that was the oldest winter counts I found was 1680. So with the soldiers then, we use things too, like they kept diaries, each day. So several of them have diaries. What's Crook doing back at Bighorn by Sheridan? He's fishing over there. The fishing is great, wonderful. We're catching all these fish. We're excited. What day is that? What's happening? Custer's getting killed that very day. They learn that later. So with the whole start, like how did this start? The U.S. issued an ultimatum by January 31st, 1876. The tribes that were not at the agencies had to come in or be declared hostile and thus at war with the U.S. So we never signed any treaties from our family. The Fort Laramie Treaty, very valuable legal document today that covers education, housing, health, food supplements, all that. But we didn't sign that. And you notice on a lot of the flags it says 1868, as does this one, as does the Crow tribe. And so that's when, from the government standpoint, that's when those boundaries were created. So with that, our group kind of had a new name. They called them the Hostiles. Who were the Hostiles? They were Hump and Crazy Horse. They were Minikoju. Oglalas were in there, Cheyenne, and Itazipcho, and just a group of people who never did come in and surrender. So I notice with these rides too, they're getting popular every year from our agencies, our reservations. And so a lot of the youth, I think, today are thinking, okay, yeah, well, we were at Rosebud or we were at Standing Rock, whatever, and then we went into the Greasy Grass. Our warriors went in there. But this bunch that I'm talking about from my own family, they didn't make a ride like that. They were right there. They were right there in the trenches already. And where that trench was, or homeland, was the Tongue River between Miles City and about Dayton, Wyoming, and then up and down the Powder River. And what had brought all of that about was the Sand Creek Massacre in 1854 in Colorado. And that's when the Cheyenne brought us war pipe, said, would you accept this and join us in united warfare? And so from there, the first engagement was Julesburg, Colorado. And the next one was the Platte Bridge fight at Casper. The Battle of Red Buttes was the same day. And we have you could use YouTube and look up Battle of Red Buttes. We made that a couple years ago and won a Spur Award for that. So our people were all in that. Then the next one was 1866 was a Fetterman fight. And then 67 was the Wagon Box fight and the Hayfield fight. Then the Rosebud. And see, it was just one continuous fighting, really, And so we had men even like, the great Sitting Bull and them, that medicine men didn't participate in the fighting part, but our men were really into the defending our homes and our children. There's elders, and there's a lot of things to think about. And so another big thing that I haven't read about this, except in the notes I have in my book. My book on the big chapter on Little Bighorn is called "The Music of the Bugle," because when the soldiers came in, my grandmother, great grandmother, and sisters, their sisters, family were picking Teamsula over on the east side of the river there, and they heard the sound of the bugles, and they knew that meant enemy, and they went racing to the camp, screaming that there were soldiers coming in. So Hump and Crazy Horse were both down in the middle part of the camp. And by the time they went to the south end, there's a relief over there too. When they went to the south end, to the bottom part where Reno came in, that was already over when they got there. That was only about 20 minutes. And then they went north. And then some of the fiercest fighting, let's move some of this Prezi up here. That's a winter count right there. There's the battle where sister saved her brother. And can anybody see brother there on the horse? You have to look out where the reins, his nose and chin. He's clamped on the side, and his arm is across the horse's neck with a rifle. So he rode on the side. This is a buffalo jump up there as well. A lot of our camps had buffalo jumps where food could be put up. Let's go to the next one there. And then this is where Crook was over at Goose Creek, where the fishing was so good. The college where I teach is in sight of this. I look out my classroom, and this is my scene. And then just a little bit to the right is Camp Cloud Peak. And this is the top was award-winning when the Indian Memorial was established. Colleen Cutshaw from the Lakota won the artist design for that. So that's our part of that. They changed the name Custer Battlefield to Little Bighorn National Monument to reflect, there's two sides to this. The middle one here is in the old museum, a Sitting Bull in the middle. A lot of our family in there, Rain in the Face on the left, Gall, PZ on the right, Hump on the kind of top left. And then I like that picture or drawing of Crazy Horse because they didn't put a picture up there. They sketched it. They made a drawing. And then there's some Arapahoes and Low Dog at the bottom left. Red Horse, who was an artist, Minikoju, who drew a lot of the exploits in the battle. So those are all resources like what we use. And that picture of my grandfather Hump is that one there, but they cropped out the ladies. They didn't know there was women in the picture. And so I showed them this is a L.A. Huffman photo taken 2 years after the battle. So let's move. Oh, there's the three-pronged attack there. They said, come in or be declared hostile. Well, they didn't come in. So you've got one unit there coming from Fort Abraham Lincoln, where the bow came back from, going west. And then you've got a contingent from Fort Ellis in Montana coming in, Gibbons column and Terry, and then Crook's column from the south, Fetterman. But then when he gets up to where it says Sheridan, that's where the fishing party started. So he didn't get all the way in. So that was the official thing. Like, okay, this is why they're out there, and this is why there's this war. Let's go to the next one there. This is the camp right there at Sheridan. The library is a Fulmer Library, and it shows there was a big arms buildup there at Cloud Peak, and in the distance is the highest point. It's got snow caps on it right now today. It's the highest point, so it was named Camp Cloud Peak. And then next one. These were some old pictures here. We were at the Crow's Nest yesterday, and that's when they first came in, and the Crow Scouts, they said, there's a big camp down there. They warned Custer, and he couldn't see him. And what that was to the west, and we were also over there yesterday, was there were thousands of ponies grazing over there by that Gary Owen today. I-90 comes up, and it's on the other side of I-90. And that's what they were seeing, was this great dust of clouds of dust coming up. So anyway, they went in. Another thing that happened at this time on the left side, as the warriors were coming through, there were some boys, and we have their names also. They found some crackers. Somebody from the Cheyenne called it crackers. It was like a hardtack, you know, and they had been dropped off one of the wagons by accident. And they had told their officer, and he said, you need to go back and get that food, because they'll find that and will be discovered, because it's going to spoil the element of surprise, going into the camp. When they got over there, they started back to get that. They popped over the hill, and here were Lakota, Cheyenne. They were eating that right then, and they took off for the camp. So at that point, Custer really moved his whole operations up by a whole day, and other things happened too. But one thing I don't think you'll read about this anywhere. So when they came in, think of the season. So Sitting Bull had the great Sundance up at Deer Medicine Rocks, but there were other ceremonies going on that were important, and Sundance is the most important event of the year ceremony. And so back in the day, it wasn't like, well, I'll do it this week because I can get time off work, or whatever, and then go on vacation later. They went on the solstice, June 21st. That's when you start. So look at 21st, 4 days, 22nd, 23rd, 24th. And Custer, when he comes in, he notes some of the village is leaving. The women are packing up the lodges, teepees, travoy, and they're leaving. And they were afraid they were going to get away, but they didn't get away for him. But another way you could say that is, well, Custer, when he came in on the greatest religious gathering of the year, but it's not worded like that. It's kind of like these two faces. Every year I do a presentation for over 10 years now at the Journey Museum in Rapid City. It's usually on the 25th, but like Whitney was saying, there's so many activities, people are moving it around, but they always had this poster to promote it, and the poster was Sitting Bull. Of course, he's got to be in there, and Custer, that represents everybody, and they're like nose to nose, like really confronting. And I said, let's get a different poster this year, something different, but so the guy also who did all these pictures is Locke from Deadwood. He had a studio up there, and he gave them to a historian from Sheridan, Elsa Spear Byron, but they were really her photos, and she didn't get credit for them. But another thing, I was up at Deadwood, and they had, just FYI, the earliest 150th Greasy Grass celebration that I was at this year. It was in April. Wow, they're on the ball. So I gave them a little local flavor. I said, well, how many here have heard of Charles Windoff? And there was, they said I broke my own attendance record. There was 204 people in this little room that came to the program in the day, but nobody knew who Windoff was. And I said, well, Charles Windoff he survived the battle. He was with Reno, and he came to lead, worked with Homestake for 19 years, Homestake Mine, and he lived to his 90s, mid-90s, and he's buried in the Black Hills National Cemetery. So, if you dig around, there's all these different people in that, and he told quite a bit about that. As far as like my family with Hump, a really valuable, I said, well, Walter Camp interviewed my grandfather in the 1900, early 1900, and all the little Bighorn people, wow, Walter Camp, see, because he's got all the soldier data. So they say, well, that's pretty cool. He interviewed an Indian, and Camp had several people. Let's move on to the next one here. Just some more of the old pictures there. And one thing I noticed too, if you've been up there, when you first come in, we were sitting there. We had lunch right by the superintendent's office yesterday, but there's a massive amount of markers growing, huge, and tourists come in and they'll say, my God, a lot of people died in this battle. Well, those most of them weren't in the battle. So I don't know if today, I think you can still be buried there, and then when they had the Fetterman fight in 1866, that was the biggest catastrophe. That was the biggest battle in the West until 10 years later, Little Bighorn overshadowed it. And a lot of them, well, most of them were reinterred up at that place right there. From there, or they went back to the east to their homes. And one thing that a lot of people overlook too, it's the 160th this year of the Fetterman. So in December, that'll be 160 years for that. So next one, please. Just more markers there. Next one. This is down on the Reno side here on the far end, on the bottom of that map. These markers, people were found later, but in a farmer's field out there. So Reno goes in first on the south end, and every fourth man holds a horse, and they're not doing well at all. They're doing the Civil War style, and ready, aim, fire, and they're no match for the Indian warfare, racing around on their horses, and they're stampeding the horses. They're getting the horses away from them, and the horses are racing in to the south end of the Hunkpapa camp, and they have the ammo in the saddlebags. Whoop, there goes our ammo, not a good sign. So that's the one that only lasted about 20 minutes. And a real turning factor, I don't like to sound too terrible things, but a turning point was that bloody knife. The Custer's favorite scout had been assigned to Reno, and he actually was killed next to Reno as they raced in, and it was really bloody and it was really gory, and some of that supposedly got on Reno, and that's when some said he lost psychological control of his unit, because then he's saying, mount up, dismount, mount up. Everybody's confused. Some are mounted, dismounted, total chaos. So they have to retreat to the top of the hill. And meanwhile, Custer is going on to the north. So this one here shows, in the middle shows the Little Bighorn River and that incline they had to climb up there. Now this Windoff from Lead, he was one of those that got a Medal of Honor. There was a few of them got Medals of Honor of the soldiers, and they were dying of thirst when Reno was dug in. It's really hot and no trees on that south end. Well, no trees hardly anywhere. But anyway, they got a Medal of Honor because some of the the soldiers had to go down to get water and risk their lives. And then there were other people covering them with arms up above. Windoff was one of those that covered them. So there are so many lenses to see this from, that there are so many stories that you can tell from this. So the bottom one is kind of like the relief there. Reno is down on the right side here, and Custer is making his way to the ultimate to the left side on the Last Stand Hill, and down in the trees area, the Lakota, Cheyenne, and a few Arapaho are camped there, and our people are coming out of Banda's Minikoju ford there in the middle, and they get into some heavy fighting with Custer and his soldiers. And right by Calhoun Hill is a real turning point because it's near Last Stand Hill, and that's where Hump and Crazy Horse and others split the command. They rode right down through the middle and split a strong command. So some of the heaviest fighting took place there from archaeology and shell casings found. And then they turned around and they went back through again. And when they went back through, my grandfather Hump was shot in the kneecap from his horse. A soldier was squatted down on the hill, and the bullet went up his leg and exited out his hip, and his horse reared up in the air and fell over on him. So he's laying there. And then another piece of this story that's not hardly known at all, I was telling these Little Bighorn associates, Hump's brother, Little Crow, accidentally killed the famous Cheyenne ally chief, Lame White Man. That's not good. And scalped him, and then they took the scalp back to the family. It's like, hey, what can you do? It's like, but anyway, we're connected to Lame White Man. I didn't say that. We had a round table at the Brinton Museum, and sitting right next to me was one of my relatives, Linwood Talbot, and that's his great grandfather. But I told him before, and said it was really a bad thing. But he, Lame White Man, came out of some family said he was in a sweat, and he came out and he put a soldier jacket on. They borrowed a lot of soldier garments and jackets, and his hair was all loose. And Little Crow thought he was a Rickaraw, and that's why he took him out. But I really like this book. We use it a lot by Greg Michno, Lakota Noon, and he breaks it down, the whole battle. It's kind of like that. It's not the global side; it's the linear side. He says what's happening at 3:04 p.m. and then what's happening at 3:07. I don't get into that at all. But anyway, I noticed he spent a lot of time with Lame White Man because he didn't know that part of it. But he said, Lame White Man, that's a big mystery, because they moved his marker on up to another spot that they said this happened. So what Michno is doing in his book is several pages were devoted to, did Lame White Man go down in this deep ravine? And that bunch of soldiers, we know who they were. So he was killed by that company. That's what they like to know. Or did he go over to this ridge and they know who was in that area and he was killed by them? Well, it's irrelevant because they didn't kill him. Little Crow did. So spinning your wheels stuff there. Didn't talk to the Indian side or didn't look at the winter counts. Let's see, that's Last Stand Hill on the left. And where the picture is taken, that's from Calhoun Hill. By that time, soldiers are all running towards Last Stand Hill. And our family described it as a little kind of a buffalo hunt. And they separate the smaller group into groups, get them off like that. So that's what they were doing with the soldiers, because they break them off from their groups. So then they went up to the Last Stand Hill, and they also went down to the cemetery area. Some of the fighting took place there, which elders once told them that, and they said, oh, don't listen to them. They don't know that. And nobody was fighting down there. Well, they had that fire in 1983 that rewrote a lot of the history with archaeology and shell casings and where people were. And sure enough, they were down there. Those elders knew what they were talking about. And then most people think that up here on the right, too, is a Last Stand Hill, that Custer was down towards the river. And our family, anyway, said that he took a slug right there in the stomach area and slouched over, was about to fall off his horse, and and two of his men came in on both sides, and they helped him back up. So they just kind of positioned him up on Last Stand Hill and set him up, and then so he's still alive, but he took from autopsy or whatever. He took another one shot in the head, which was probably during the battle, and then he did have a slug in there. So let's go to the next one there. Next one, this is just another map on Reno Hill. And then this is some of the drawings here. The one in the middle on the left, that depicts Crazy Horse there from Bad Heart Bull, has valuable drawings because he represents some of the earliest ledger art. I found some older just recently, but his ledger art is in a pictographic history of the Ogallala Sioux. And actually his works was buried with him, but it was reproduced. They made copies of that from his family. So that's a valuable piece there. And then the picture I have up here, my grandfather used that war club in the battle, and he was buried with that. So he has a grave area, a marker, and is buried. And Crazy Horse, there's not told where he's at, and Touch the Cloud also from our family. He has a secret grave area. In the middle is Two Moons, and Dull Knife is seated. So the wives up here of Hump are from the Morning Star family of Dull Knife. And then, of course, the famous Sitting Bull. We're connected to Sitting Bull from his nephews, One Bull and White Bull. And we married into White Bull. He talked a lot to them about the Little Bighorn. He even said he killed Custer, Sometimes his story changed over the years. He's being paid pretty well by, so he's kind of, really good resource and has a winter cow, but then some historians, they don't like it because it changed story. But one author said, since he was as part of Hump's band and fought with him as well, why would he say so little about Hump? Well, there's a reason for that. He moved to Cherry Creek. That's where Hump lived, and White Bull lived right next door to him. And so he goes out, he's younger, and it's against the protocol of our people to go out and tell the whole story of the chief, and he probably get his butt kicked when he come back, and telling all this stuff that happened. And besides that, some people, not him, but a lot of people were afraid of repercussion, and that they told too much. So that's really evident with Walter Camp interviews. And Hump's brother, Iron Thunder, was there also, and their interviews match each other pretty close. They're saying the same thing. And when they're really pressed about specific details, like on Calhoun Hill, they'll say, okay, well, who was this, or a name? They'll say, well, I remember it was real hot, and the sun was overhead, and they keep changing the subject, And then they go back to the interview, and they start pressing them. And when they start pressing them too much, they say, well, I know it was a pretty hot day, and now the sun was about over here. And they don't get it. They're trying to, evade those questions. Let's go to the next one there. I interviewed, I know the family here. This is Spotted Wolf. They got some trophies there. They got, in their family, a bugle from the battle. And they also got a guidon. They gave both of those to their mother. Mother got a present. And Spotted Wolf became a chief after the Rosebud and was a great leader of the Cheyenne, and was, when they honored him, he had just lost his eye. They had shot him point blank in that eye. That's why he's got those shades there. And he was still bloody and all dirt when they were doing that that ceremony. So really, really brave, amazing people. Next one, please. This is Moving Robe Woman. Women had a big role at the battle. They fought. They told what they'd seen. This is Moving Robe Woman, Papa. She moved up. Some of her family knew or worked with Ed Lemon up in our area there in Lemon, South Dakota. And Crawler was their name, it became. But she observed a lot of things and told. Those are Rickaraw scouts up above and Crows. We had to fight all of them too. And then Comanche, the famous horse that the only survivor, they said, from there. And that wasn't Custer's horse, but it was Miles Keel's horse. And they were going to put it down. It had, a lot of bullet wounds in it, and they nursed him back to health. He ended up at Fort Meade over here and nursed back to health, good health. And I think there was some proclamations that he never be rode, that he was given caviar, champagne, stuff like that. And finally, he went to Kansas. He's stuffed down there at the university. So he lives on, Comanche. Next one. They had a tradition at that school, and they'd have the finals. They'd go by, and the students would take a pinch of his hair and that little area where he is displayed. And after a while, he got to looking pretty bald, so they had to create some more hair for him. And then this is the note that Custer that was written to Benteen. Says, "Come on, big village, be quick, bring packs." That's the ammo. That's important. P.S. He mentioned it twice. Bring packs. It's the last note there. It's Custer on the left, and this is Cook over here. Sign that. He says, P.S. Bring Cook packs. So there was Wooden Leg book. Wooden Leg was Cheyenne. Good resources. He was there. He said, I got the most unusual scalp that day from the soldiers. And he went on, and what it turned out to be, it was he got one of the sideburns of Cook's was on his belt. Peace. Next one. Okay, these are some more artifacts that were found so I'm going to go to the end of the battle, and our family left from there, and they went south. They went over by Gary Owen, and they went down on the Reno side, and that was all over. That had even been torched with fire. They didn't know that there were even soldiers in that area. They thought they were all up on the hill there basking. And what our group did, the headmen humping them, they didn't dress up like this, but the younger ones, they put on the soldiers' clothes. There's a long mural at the visitor center, the old one, and it's really accurate. They had the soldiers are all dead, but on Last Stand Hill, but they're putting on the breeches, trousers, and shirts, uniforms, and hats, and they're playing soldier. But see, they wanted these garments for later anyway, so they just put them on. So when they were leaving, there was 2 columns, and they were kind of like playing soldier. I mean, it looked like they were dressed, a lot of them. So then they didn't know this, but down in the timber of Reno, these people who have been in there for 2 days, they seen them, they're waving, over here, over here. They thought it's the relief column from the Northwest coming in. Nope. So that bunch went over, and they launched a few bullets in there, and they scattered back to their gopher holes. And when it was over, it was over. It was time to go. Our people didn't have to destroy everybody. The day was over. Their first camp was at Lodgegrass. We went by it yesterday. Right at that exit, there's a real open green meadow. It was so hot they didn't put up any of the lodges or anything. And there were burials. Some people had died, and some were seriously wounded. And so we know the location of a lot of those are in crevices and places like that. And even the Crows who are there today, in their story, they know there's the dead are there. So one thing, this is a guidon, like Spotted Wolf got. Let's go to the next one once. And next one, that's the firearms they used. And let's go to the next one here. Some more pictures here in 1926 at a reunion. And next one, another reunion here with White Bull. Next one. So this one here is the terrain there at Reno and an old stereo card view. And the top center, that's the 125th when I spoke there 25 years ago. The Last Stand Hill is in the background. Next one, please. Next one. And next. Okay, right here on the left is where the first camp was by Lodge Grass, real green there. Looks just like that today. They're on their way to the Tongue River. The main camp is from Dayton up to Miles City. So they're going down to Dayton area, Hump and Crazy Horse. And burials took place in places like this. Later, landowner seen this area and a non-Indian, and children were playing up in there, and they started uncovering all kinds of artifacts. They were 7th Cavalry things. It was that clothing, see, that they were wearing and those objects. And then pretty soon there were remains. The ranchers told of remains, and there were a number of skulls. The next landowner that came in said, oh yeah, when I got the land, they had put skulls on all the fence posts in the pasture, and they used it for target practice and destroyed all that, so really terrible things. So these are some things that were found there. This watch could be identified to a certain soldier in the battle, and then these buttons were found in that cave area as well. That top piece is a ferrule. It's the piece on the guidon, and there's a chunk of wood in it left. It's been like broke. So this was the last time that Hump and Crazy Horse seen each other for a while, because Crazy Horse went east through Sioux Pass. The next, he went into Powder River, and the next time they seen each other was at the Battle of Slim Buttes here in South Dakota, up by Riva. And so if you studied that, they came into that camp, Anson Mills and Crook, and here was a guidon. They call it the American Horse Lodge, but it was a Iron Plume Lodge. And they found all kinds of stuff. These guys had just come from the Little Bighorn. They found Keel's gloves, gauntlet gloves, all beaded. They destroyed the camp, a lot of food, meat, and this guidon was there. So I was thinking, well, there were several guidons. So I was thinking, well, what if there was a guidon that I found and it was broke and it fits, see that piece to that ferrule connection somewhere out there. There's those. And there were even a couple of flags that were in the pack train that were, they said unfurled. It's like, oh, we're under attack. Don't worry about that flag. That's the last of our worries. Just defend yourself. Next one, please. Okay, and this is just another map of going down there. And next one. You've seen some of these pictures here, and they're kind of, exaggerated. Famous ones were back in the day were those Budweiser ones. And where I went to, grew up in the pool hall that I lived in practically, I could get to the back door of the pool hall from my house in under 3 minutes. I had it timed in the back door. But anyway, you get in there, and there's a big Budweiser. So you've seen them, and very inaccurate with South American armor and all that. But I always thought this one was like that too. But no, this one here, even though it's symbolic of the times, and Custer's always the last one standing, which he wasn't. But this author was Paxson, and he actually drew real people. He went to Standing Rock and interviewed people and got their appearance and all that. So, hey, if you want to Crazy Horse picture, this is how he depicted Crazy Horse. That's him right there, although he most likely did not have a headdress at all. And the warrior that's right in behind him with the rifle is Hump. And over here, there's Rain in the Face and Gall. And the same way with the soldiers down here. The soldiers are real people. So let's go to the next one. It shows that I've numbered. So that's the schematic there. You can look and see who's who. But anyway, he went the extra 9 yards there. So I want to thank you for letting me share the slides, with you. And I want to open it up to some questions. And probably the ones I can't answer is like how many bullets were fired and stuff like that. But I'll work on the global side. So actually, after the battle, then April and May of 77, it was all over. So it's the big victory. There were 5 surrenders from Otter Creek up there. They didn't want the 5 in the family ever together again. They sent Crazy Horse to Camp Robinson, and that's a Red Cloud Agency. They sent Touch the Cloud, his cousin, to the Spotted Tail Agency, even though he's Minikoju, that's a Sichongu. But south of the agency is the Spotted Tail Agency. There's a sign down there. It's in Nebraska, actually, today, and south of Pine Ridge. And so they sent him there, and Hump went to the Tongue River Cantonment at Miles City. General Miles is up there. And then the other one was Dull Knife, went to Fort Robinson and ran away to Oklahoma, and that's a whole story. And the 5th one was Lame Deer. He was killed south of Lame Deer. But with that, the wars were over. There were no people out. Everybody else had reported to the agencies, and settlers could be seen coming in, wagons. They would never see a Lakota. So the Crows tell a lot of our story. They're right there on the property, and the Cheyenne are not far away either. But some of the people that have the real stories are on these reservations in South Dakota, the Ocheti, Shakopee, Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota, and you couldn't leave the reservation. So the generation that came next, like from my family, they couldn't even go up there. They didn't even know what it looked like. They heard stories about the land and how it was, but all they had was a story. So I'm really fortunate to be right there. I can walk and ride it, and I've been everywhere out there, on all these sites. So anybody going up to the celebration there during the anniversary? Yeah, all right. Going to take your horse up there? Yeah, we had I know there was the Rosebud one was delayed a little bit on the reenactment. They said there was a horse wreck, they call them. That's too bad, and not expecting rodeo. And speaking of a rodeo, when Frank Garrard kept a book notes, they went up to try to get Hump and Crazy Horse to sign the treaty. Said, come in, they're giving gifts. These are other Lakota. And they rode in there and they said, see what we have, all these trinkets and things like that. They're giving gifts, come in. And my grandfather Hump went over there and he looked at one of those hats the guy had, and he pulled out his big knife, bone knife, and he stuck a hole through the hat, and he pulled it down really hard over the horse's head and the ears. The horse stuck out, and that horse went wild, started bucking, and that was all recorded by our people and Frank Garrard, the scout. So I said, well, there's a first rodeo in Dayton right there, if we can go way back. But he said, take your trinkets back. we're not signing the treaty. And in fact, they were making plans that day to go up into Grovon country and keep them at bay because they were disrupting the buffalo herd. So anyway, there was a reason for that, and it was usually survival and the hunt, and the buffalo were getting more scarce all the time. So any questions or a big thing is that the visitor center is being rebuilt and it's not quite finished. I wish they would have speeded up the construction, but it's not going to be ready. They tore that down last year. And then another big thing is the 200 acres. That's a big thing for the tribes to own land, on there and have there's no, I mean, I would have had something done already. There's a lot of potential because when I go up there, here's a bus. I seen it yesterday. There's a teepee right there by the cemetery, Apsalica Tours. So you get on that and you get the Crow version of the whole battle. And when they were done with the scouts and they took Custer in there, they warned him not to go in. And he said, you can go now. They didn't have to be told twice. They were out of there. So they never witnessed any of that. So that's our story, being told up there. So I really appreciate that, the opportunity to come in here and tell about some of our family stories. And some of them are, straight out of my book. And when Hump surrendered, he worked with Miles for a while, General Miles. He was in on the Nez Perce deal with Chief Joseph. He later went to Canada, quit being a scout, joined Sitting Bull in Canada, had the largest number of people who surrendered, 714. There's a census of that. And when he comes into the agency, he liked Miles. His sons were named Nelson Miles Hump, John Bearcoat Hump. They had Miles in them, and Miles called him the greatest warrior he ever knew in his military of Indian. And so he had some surrenders well known. Geronimo surrendered to Miles and Chief Joseph, and Hump saved his life once. And anyway, that's in his autobiography. Yes.
Okay. What's the most interesting facts that you have covered walking the month?
Oh, I think there's a lot of things, but I think the thing that stands out is you'll see a winter count of humps that the world does not know about that I have. And the winter count is, a whole history of stuff. And when I got that, it wasn't, they're just drawings, and then somebody has to write what that event is. But it only took me about 2 hours to positively identify every drawing on there because it so matched other Lakota winter counts. There's a great book that I work with the Smithsonian too. It's called The Year the Stars Fell. It's got all the winter counts that the Smithsonian has. And that name comes from because star phenomena was important, eclipse and meteor showers. That's big news here, camped out, and what's going on here. So anyway, it matched two of those very closely, but they're drawn differently. So I'll tell you an example. When the first Hump was killed by the Shoshone, I knew there was some deal with a pistol that he had. Something was about the story. So at the Smithsonian, I found the important event, 1870, was his image, and he's holding his arm out like this, and the pistol is dangling like this here. See, it's broke or it misfired. There's some problem with that. So that's the kind of things you piece together. And then since that entry was in maybe 15 winter counts across our whole nation, each person drew it a little bit different. And there it was, the one with Crazy Horse on there. a great resource is that pictographic history of the Ogallala Sioux, Bad Heart Bull, and nobody's in there more than High Backbone. And he's got a cape, a red cape colored. His horse is reared up, and he's parading around, and it's like people said, "What? They had Superman capes? They played Superman? What that was the last time we ran the Kiowa out of the Black Hills over the Hot Springs area, and as Kiowa were all leaving, they were greatly outnumbered. But he rode back and forth in show and leadership, and he had taken one of these red capes, and they got the red cape fighting the Mexican army. That's where the red capes come from. So he liked that cape, and it's kind of like not good. The enemy sees your stuff. You have our stuff. It's not a good sign. Iowa never came back. They ever. And another thing that's, I think, overlooked is how large the Oceti Shakopee, what they call the Sioux Nation, really was in population. It dwarfed all these Crow and Cheyenne tribes, and even today, I think where the Dene Navajo were always the largest population, and overnight the Cherokee Nation passed them by relaxing the blood quantum. Also brought in a lot of blonde hair and blue eyes, but they traced to the rolls. The third largest are the Ojibwe nations, and we used to be fourth, but the Choctaw recently passed us. But those others, there's like 360 tribes in their population or whatever, and a lot of these tribes weren't even on the list for population, so small, And we had stuff going on in Nebraska at the same time. Dakotas were, Little Crows War, and Minnesota, and things going on in North Dakota, and then the whole Powder River, all that stuff. But that was our beat during that time period. And the other question, that was kind of a long answer, I guess.
You mentioned that you have a new book coming out. What do you expect that?
My new book I hope to have out this year. It's been done for 7 years, and it's 25 years of work coming. And I've always had trouble with it for funding and getting it published. And some friends of mine believed in it so much from the area where I work. They're just funding it. They're just handing the money over. So the greatest friends you could ever imagine that know what's in that book and believe in it. And a lot of people that were 100 years old, were interviewed in that. From Touch the Cloud, then Touch the Cloud died in 1905. And nobody pieced this together. It's in my book. He died on the exact anniversary of Crazy Horse's death. He's the one who picked him up at Camp Robinson, said he's too honorable of a man to be put in the guardhouse. The big Touch the Cloud carries him in. McGillicuddy pronounces him dead. But Touch the Cloud died on September 5th, 1905, on the very anniversary of his cousin. Hump died in 1908, December 10th, and Red Cloud almost exactly a year to the day, December 9th, I think, 1909. The next year, Geronimo went down. Horse Crazy Horse had died, Sitting Bull, 1890. But with that, a whole new leadership came in with our nations. People went to Washington. They came back as chiefs. Some of our elders, they said, that they never was a chief, Washington did that. But when Hump surrendered, he surrendered at Cherry Creek, and that area remained a lot of full-bloods, a lot of people who spoke their language, a lot of people who knew ceremony, and he picked as far away from the agent as he could. And while the agent at Standing Rock, McLaughlin, enforced against the ghost dance, sent Indian police out to arrest him. Our agent was not as, crazy like that. But in his reports, he says, we fear Hump. We're going to leave him alone. He's not hurting anybody. He's not committing depredations on the white man. So he continued with the ghost dance into the stronghold in the Badlands. That was one of his main areas. And then hunting up into the Slim Buttes area, not the Pine Ridge Slim Buttes, but where the battle area was. And he roamed all over, and he was not supposed to leave the reservation. So he became a ghost dancer. And then his cousin Spotted Elk, Bigfoot, went into Wounded Knee, and who tried to stop Hump from going on that same route? He was in Texas. And they said, Hump will probably join them too. We're going to have a big war. Nelson Miles got word up. He said, come in. Will you come in? And he surprised everybody. He came in because he listened to Miles. He liked General Miles. So anyway, that's a little tip of the iceberg. But a lot of stuff I shared with you is stuff that hasn't been out there, too. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for your attendance and inviting me to hear. Hey, don't shout.